Welcome everyone to Already Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Tara. We talk about TV shows here. The year is 2021 and the name of the show is Babylon 5. This is season 2, episode 4. It is called A Distant Star. So, full spoilers for the episode as always. This one features an old friend of Sheridan who intentionally drops by on Babylon 5 to say hello because he has to refuel his own ship. He's command of a ship out in the Rim, so we hear a little bit about what it's like and about them building more gates, and they're sort of expanding further out as they go, which is, you know, because we know they have jump gates and that's how they get around the large distances in space, but it's kind of interesting to hear that they're continually doing that. I think he mentions they've just finished Sector 900, wherever that may be, so were you curious about this?
I mean, now that you mentioned it, yeah. I didn't think about it when I watched the episode.
Yeah, I mean, that did I, really, but hearing them talk about the edge of known space and like, oh, maybe there's other things out there, and it builds a mystery a bit. We do have to talk about guest stars again. This is something that comes up a lot in this show. There's 2 guest stars in this episode from various things. So the old friend, Captain, whatchamacallum, whose name I obviously can't remember right now, Captain Jack Maynard. He is Dr. Jacoby from Twin Peaks, so that was a pleasant sight to see.
Can I ask, was he good in Twin Peaks?
He was. Here's the thing, Tara. I'm going to agree that he's not that great in this episode, but in Twin Peaks, he fits the quirky character that David Lynch has given him.
Okay.
I would agree that in this episode, he is a little stilted.
He just seems to say the lines wrong.
That may be the best critique I've ever heard of an actor in my life. He just seems to say the lines wrong. I agree. There was something a little bit off about his performance. The other guest star I wanted to mention is Garibaldi sort of getting some food deliveries in the black market. We'll explain why when we get to his plot. But the guy who is in the cargo area helping him, he's been in a bunch of stuff, particularly around this time period. A bit further back, he was in Return of the Living Dead, but around this time period, he was in like several shows and movies. He was in an episode of Lois and Clark, a couple episodes of that early on. He was in some other thing. I think he was in the Street Fighter movie of all things. Like, he was in a lot of things in the mid-90s.
You know, I don't recognize him, but I thought he was really good.
Yeah, he's a dependable character actor. He's good. So it's one of those guys where he'll pop up and I'll never remember what I know him from at first. But I'm like, oh, I know this guy. I've seen him like tons of times. And then I'll look him up and I'm like, oh,
he's that guy.
Yeah, he's been on like 10 different things that I've seen. And he's still working today. I've not really seen him in anything recent, I don't think. It's all stuff from the 90s I know him from. So maybe he's just done a lot of Law and Order and shit now. I don't know what he's doing. But he's around. He's around. So yeah, I think, given what we just said about Jacoby, which is what I'm going to call him because that's what he is to me,
Maynard.
I do think this is probably the weakest episode of the season thus far.
Yeah, there's some good stuff in it. I like the stuff with the Len that comes up. I think that's really interesting. Whether or not like she's accepted as a Mimbari now, what the consequences are because of her transformation with her people. I thought that was very, very interesting, and I'm sure we're going to get a lot more about that. Yeah, here it's really just the one scene of this other, and it's because I thought it was a Mimbari who came from Homeworld, but it wasn't. This is a Mimbari who's speaking on behalf of the Mimbari who are living on Babylon 5, which I thought was an interesting tale. Hey, I don't even know if we're comfortable with you representing us now. You're not really one of us anymore. Yeah, they have some sort of like rule amongst Mimbari of, it's kind of like the ape no kill ape law rule, but it's Mimbari like trust without question or something. And but they don't know if they could trust her because they don't think she's Mimbari anymore. Yeah, the argument's not that rule should be broken. It's that Mimbari always trust Mimbari, but we're just not sure if you're Mimbari anymore, so therefore it does not apply to you. The rules don't apply here. Yeah.
It's an interesting take on it. It's funny, there was a good comment on the second episode review, because obviously we're always like 2 ahead, or an extra one ahead from the public ones going up, and about how originally Delenn was supposed to start off looking more male. And it was meant to be more of a direct kind of parallel to a trans person going through the transition. And they never could quite get it to work because they wanted Mira Furlan. This is just going off the YouTube comment, but I can kind of see like where they were going with that if they wanted to, because this conversation here of like her being kind of ostracized does kind of feel, I can see how this would have fit with those ideas.
Yeah, I thought maybe I brought that up because I definitely read that in the trivia, either with The Gathering or Midnight on the Firing Line.
Yeah, way back.
It was about how originally the Mimbari were going to change sexes, which is why when we first see her character in The Gathering, she has a lot of male features in her face that eventually get taken away.
Yeah, well, it's not even eventually, it's the very next episode. Like, they changed it for episode 1, and I think
they continued to change it a little bit as like from episode 1 a little bit more.
I mean, yeah, but they probably tweaked that a little bit gradually, but like there's a big difference from The Gathering to episode 1. Like she's immediately, because when I went back to watch The Gathering, I was like, wait, wow, Delenn looks weird. Like I don't remember looking like this at all. And then when I got to Midnight in the Firing Line,
she looks a lot more androgynous.
And I think maybe that was just like not so much that the idea was bad, it's that just the makeup or whatever, they couldn't. It wasn't convincing enough. They didn't like it. They made a creative choice to just sort of, okay, we can't pull this off, so we're not going to do it. Which is fair. That's a valid reason not to do something. The amount of low budget things I watch where I'm like, you could have just chose not to do this thing and it wouldn't have looked embarrassing. And not that it was embarrassing in this case per se, but you know what I mean. Like sometimes the right choice is to not do it because you can't.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sticking with Delenn, like, do you think there's something going on with her and like Sheridan? Like there might be building up to a possible romance in the future. I mean, I know it's pretty early on to call anything, but they've had like a bit of chemistry these past couple episodes where they've been together.
I didn't consider that.
Like when she's first revealed, like he kind of has a moment of, oh my God, you're beautiful. And then they have a moment here. I don't know. Like I have no idea, but speculation.
I think what's interesting about their relationship to me is that Sheridan's clashing a lot with various people and various subjects. A lot, particularly in this episode, we'll get to his plot, but I think with Delenn, it's interesting that Delenn, her conversation with him in the garden, right, reminded me a lot of her conversations with Sinclair. But obviously she's talking to someone different. So it's a bit less like, hey, I secretly know who you are and I know all these things about you. It's less that. But the overall philosophy of what she's saying to him and the guidance she's trying to give him, because okay, you're a new person to me, but ultimately I still believe in these things and I'm still going to try and like share my wisdom with you. So I didn't necessarily take it as romantic. I mean, I wouldn't be like shocked if maybe they do something with that. Particularly because there's a moment early on in the episode where Maynard, Dr. Jacoby, damn it, when Maynard sees her and he's like, wait, is she a Mimbari? Or was she? She looks kind of like a Mimbari, but not really. And he's like, it's really complicated. And it almost felt like they were having someone like ask Sheridan specifically this question, and he was like, I mean, it's hard to tell, and we don't know if to believe her story or not. But no, I mean, Delenn stuff is super interesting right now, and I like that it's not, because obviously she woke up in episode 2. She was pretty much absent last episode, I think, and then I like that they're. So it was nice to get like some small plot beats with her here. She's probably due an episode that's really focusing on her, maybe a 1 or 2 time. I don't know if it'll be next time or maybe a couple more, but she's probably due a meaty focus. Yeah,
I'm sure that's what they were setting up with this one. Is that coming up soon, if not next.
Yeah,
is a Delenn focused one. And Jakar, we haven't gotten Jakar in a while.
Yeah,
bring him back.
Yeah, no Londo in this episode though. They took a break from the Londo.
Yeah.
That's why.
That's just how they do these episodes.
That's why it's the weakest one of the season so far. It's the only one without Londo. That's not true. That's not why. But I'm cracking my joke. This is the thing. I was actually thinking like halfway, because there was a comment as well saying that season 1 has a lot of those standalone episodes, but season 2 through 4, it's pretty much just tightly serialized, and there's very little. And I was actually like halfway through this episode, I was thinking, this one feels very standard. It's not in a bad way per se, but it feels very season 1-y in a lot of ways. But then in the back half, when some big stuff kind of showed up, I was like, oh, now it's starting to feel a bit more connected to everything that's going on. So it started off feeling a bit more separate, but then once we got to the shadow ship in hyperspace, which even the fact that we even explored in this episode, the traveling when you're going through the gates, you're going through hyperspace, and what's that's like, and the detail we learned that ships do sometimes get lost in there, and no ship has ever been recovered. Any ship that's ever been lost in hyperspace, until this episode, obviously, which is the kind of the big dramatic plot in the back half. But
thanks to Poochie, who's back.
Kefir? Yes, Kefir.
Yes, Kefir.
Joe was funny is that this show, so Jacoby Maynard, he's like telling his war stories, and him and Sheridan are laughing, but they're telling, I think Ivanov is there, Kefir's there, and then there's another pilot there. And I was kind of wondering, this is weird, this other pilot that we've not seen before is getting more lines than Kefir. Why is he getting so much time? And ultimately it's because he's the leader of the squad, and he's going to die heroically in the back half of the episode, and then Kefir's getting the promotion to make him a bit more important. And I was like, okay, alright, that makes sense.
His death was so funny.
Ah, Tara, that's mean.
He had a really funny death.
I was too excited by the shadow ship showing up and like blasting them to be worried about him screaming out
the way
Kefir's
he
name.
yells Kefir's name is hilarious.
I'll have to go back and see it again. I'm not recalling the amusement of it, but maybe you're right. Maybe
I watched it twice.
Oh, okay.
And both times, like the second time I was playing Animal Crossing while watching it, and I still like looked up at that moment and started laughing again because it was so funny. I mean, I feel bad that he's gone.
I mean, it's fine. I mean, I think Maynard was the one where it was like there was so much time spent to him just visiting, and the fact that he was leaving halfway through the episode, I was like, okay, they've spent so much time on him, he's going to either die or be in grave danger in the back half of this episode. It's sure enough to get stranded. But a lot of this is more to do, of course, to do with Sheridan. It's a bit more what it brings up for Sheridan, which is that meeting his old, because he used to be his commanding officer, this guy, this Maynard, and they're telling stories, and Maynard's like surprised that he's taking this job, because he's, you're meant to be on a ship, you're meant to be out in space adventuring and being a starship captain or whatever, and here you're running this city, and it kind of stirs something Sheridan when he starts being really snippy with people. He yells at Garibaldi for telling him stuff that he doesn't care about. He gets snippy at Ivanova for asking for help with something. He's he's not over the top, but he has these little moments with people where he gets really kind of, and probably my favorite scene of the episode is the one where he kind of admits that he's not sure if he's right for this job to Ivanova. That was probably my favorite scene, I think, of the whole episode, because I appreciate what Maynard's doing for the plot, but again, the performance was a little bit awkward, so I didn't necessarily love all the scenes that he was actually in. But
yeah, it's unfortunate.
But when it got to Sheridan and Ivanova sitting there, and he basically, when she says, you're going to have to decide soon, given that I am the XO here, that I'm the one who's, going to have to like...
Yeah, he's there at his desk covered in like papers, and for some reason they have clear paper in the future. Which is, I mean, it's fine. It's future paper.
The future!
It seems really inefficient, but...
But I thought it was a genuine moment, and I think if I ever complain about Boxleitner's performance so far, because I think he's still settling into the role, I think this scene was probably his best acting moment so far.
Maybe you can take it as sort of a meta thing, like, maybe this role is not right for me. I'm still not sure if I'm going to be able to fill in Sinclair's shoes, Yeah,
because there's a couple of... Because I think that's part of what I liked about it.
Will
is that
the fans accept me?
When Garibaldi goes to him to tell him about the security issue, which is meaningless, it doesn't really matter. We don't really even see any more of it. But it's the sort of thing that I do.
Theft.
Yeah, but it's the sort of thing that I do remember him going to Sinclair a lot about and saying, "Hey, I'm dealing with this thing." And Sinclair would be like, "Well, keep me informed and keep up the good work." And it would be like a lot. It's almost like he'd always just go to Sinclair for a little pep talk, just to like know that he's doing okay.
Yeah.
And Sheridan's like, "Well, don't bother me with this. You're my security chief. You deal with it. Don't bring this to my attention. Go away."
Yeah, I mean, he's not entirely wrong. Like, this is something that if it's not like a huge deal to the ship and something that they can take care of internally, like, let me know when it's taken care of or something, and then that's enough. I don't need to know step by step. Because, every captain and boss is different. You gotta, see what they want to know and what you can keep out. I'm sure Picard would be the same way.
Yeah, I think the other big part of it, of course, is that he says early on in the episode that maybe this job wasn't what he had in mind when he first started his career, but he does feel like he can make a difference here, and it doesn't sound like he's convinced of that himself. Like, he's saying that, but he's not really believing it. But over the course of the episode, he hears a story from Maynard, yeah, who tells him about seeing something, and it sounds like one of these, the shadow ships, right? That's what he's describing. He's describing, there was something there. It was covering stars, but then it was gone. It was like, and it kind of freaked him out. That's the second time I've heard something about that. And then, of course, after the attack in the hyperspace, especially because Kefir describes it when he gets back at the end, I think he is realizing that, one, there is something that he can make a difference with here, because something's brewing, something big is going down and building to something. But the other thing he talks about is believing in the magic. He talks about how he's kind of lost, and how it's very similar in a lot of ways to, if you remember when Londo was talking about I'm too old to dance, or my shoes are too tight, but it's okay because I've forgotten how to dance, something like that. It reminded me a little bit of that in the way that he was kind of talking about he doesn't really believe in anything anymore. It's kind of all in his past, and it's Delen's speech with him, that dialogue she has with him, where she talks about how we're all
where she had just watched Carl Sagan's Cosmos. Clearly,
we're all part of the universe. The atoms in you are the same atoms that have been in the parts of the stars, parts of whatever. Cause
it does sound nice when Delenn says that. She has a nice voice.
Yeah, because at the end of the episode, when he's sort of reflecting on it, he sort of smiles and says, "What is it?" She says, "Star stuff." It's not even that elegant sounding, but the way she says it,
that's what Sagan calls it. Yeah,
and then the way he sort of says it and smiles. I think Boxleitner's, as much as I think this is the weakest episode of the season because of some of the uneven stuff, I do think he's maybe given his best performance so far this episode, and I do like how it's kind of building to certain things. Plus, I do think the action set piece of, okay, the ship's stranded in like hyperspace between two gates, and we have to daisy chain the fighter jets to try and get to them to pull them back is a fun thing. Yeah,
I mean, I like all that stuff too. I did think not to be like negative all the time, but I did think that there was a lack of sound effects from the ship that was distressed. Like, people were shouting, but they weren't shouting over anything because there's no sounds like added in for background noise or anything like that, or music. I thought that was kind of odd.
Yeah, actually, if I'm going to critique stuff on that ship, there's two things. One, there was legitimately like a door with a hallway behind it, but the hallway was just a painting, and it was like really obviously just a painting. So that stuck out to me. Or maybe green screened, but either way, it was static.
Yeah.
The other thing is like the engineer on the ship that Maynard talks to a couple of times. His performance, like, the poor guy he was not good. He was not convincing in anything he was saying, and it was really, and it was fine. You know what, Maynard guest star,
it's okay.
Has like 4 lines.
I still overall enjoy the show and what it adds to the story. Yes. It's just part of the deal with the show.
Yeah, well, obviously some episodes fare a lot better in this regard than others, but this one suffers maybe more than most, where I do think the guest stars, particularly, I mean, it wouldn't be a big deal if this little guest star was not that good, but obviously having the main captain character, who, and the weird thing is that I like him on another show, so I know he's not terrible.
Maybe he was just uncomfortable with the sci-fi. I mean, I haven't seen Twin Peaks, but I've heard that's quite weird, so I don't know.
Yeah, but it's funny because you think, oh, he's in a really kooky show, maybe he'd be fine talking about all this alien stuff, but he doesn't sound convinced when he's talking about everything. It feels like he's just read about it in the script. I don't feel like the character really believes anything he's saying, I guess.
Yeah.
That's how to sum it up.
It's unfortunate. Yeah. I mean, we've had worse.
Oh, yeah, we definitely have. But you mentioned liking the cargo guy, so let's talk about why that plot's happening. So there's a subplot in this episode, which I found very entertaining. There's a sort of comedy.
Yeah, plot, I did too. It was fun.
Which is because Garibaldi got shot, Franklin's like, hey, you need to like help your body get healthier, and your diet is terrible. So here's a list of things that I want you to avoid. And the Garibaldi's like looking at it in shock, and I was like, what? These are all the things. Is there anything left? He's like, he gives him a second list. He's like, here you go, this is what you can eat. And he's like, oh, you gotta put me on a diet. He's like, no, food plan. Food plan. And okay, it was amusing enough, but then there's a scene where he's with Sheridan, and he's like, hey sir, you've put on you've put on like 10 pounds since you got here, and I like this is actually a callback, because he said to his sister in episode 2 that because of the big garden has all these natural foods growing, which he's not used to having access to when he's out, in space, he's actually like been indulging a little bit more than he would have otherwise. So it's actually a slight little callback that he's put on some weight.
Right, yeah.
So he's told that he has to get healthier, and he says, oh, we'll lose that weight in no time. And he's like, if this is a we thing, how about you go on the diet?
He's being placed on rabbit food.
And then alternatively, and I like this, the flip on this is that Yvonne is the opposite, where she's avoided like certain foods too much, and she needs more like carbs.
she's got like some nutrient deficiencies.
Yeah.
And she seems like the type that would skip meals altogether and just drink coffee.
Yeah. And she's like, but if I eat what you've told me to, I'll gain weight. It's like, yeah, hello, that's okay. And she's like furious about it. And it leads to this great scene where they're all sitting having dinner together, and they're all just looking at what's on their plate, and they're miserable. And Sheridan, it's just like leaves. It just looks like leaves and nothing else.
he's got like salad with like cloves of garlic on it.
Yeah. Garibaldi, it's more of a healthier mix. It looks like salad, but he's got like some like, I don't know, bread
like
or something.
Meatloaf?
Maybe it is, yeah. And then notably, maybe there was some meat in it, but it looked more like pasta and sauce to me that Ivanova had. But they basically all sort of look at each other and just sort of swap. They all sort of like go one up the line, and Ivanova gets the super, planty one because she's
lean salad.
Yeah. And they're all happier. But what made this entire plot is just the way Franklin walks into shot, just looking over their shoulder, and they all just quietly move things back. I was like, oh man, he's the food police. He's the diet Gestapo. It's
yeah,
made me laugh.
And he is really like hard on everybody, so I'm sure they're afraid of him a little bit.
And it has a funny enough payoff where he catches him smuggling in some food from this guy in the cargo. And Garibaldi gives him this sob story about how he's dying, or his father used to make him this every year on his birthday, and so he does it. So every year on his dad's birthday or the anniversary of his death, whatever it is, he makes it because it's the one thing that connects him to his father. So it's a one-time thing. And
did you think the story was bullshit?
Do you know, I thought it was at first, because I thought they were going to reveal it to be a lie, but because it just kept going, I thought, maybe it actually is just true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell, because Garibaldi's like is pretty straight-faced when he tells a joke also.
Yes, he could just be sly, but Franklin said, okay, you know what, fine, but make enough for two. I'll celebrate with you, and then we'll share it. And the joke is that when he starts eating, and I'll be honest, I didn't know what this was. I've never heard of this before.
Yeah, some Italian fondue. It's described as olive oil with melted butter in it, and then anchovies, and something else, and then you dip various things into it, like meats and breads and stuff.
Yeah, so
it's like a really, really heavy, high-fat meal. Yes,
and Franklin, as soon as he takes a bite, he's like, "Oh, this is good," and he starts like eating it really quickly. "Oh, this is great," and Garibaldi's like, "Well, I better not give you any dessert." And he's like, "Whoa, let's not be too hasty now. Let's not be too hasty." So the joke is that Franklin is equally tempted by unhealthy food, as most of us are.
We all have our vices.
Yes. As a vegan, was this any more or less funny for you, do you think?
I mean, I have my vices as a vegan. I've got a drawer full of chocolate right there.
Vegan chocolate, of course, without the milk.
Of course.
Yes. Yeah, it's a funny plot. And I think it's another example of Sheridan mixing in with the other core crew members, the core characters, and starting to build up a rapport with them. It just starts to make him feel like he does kind of belong there with Garibaldi and with the others. Because this scene with the swap food's obviously a little bit after the scene where he snaps at Garibaldi, and he kind of admits to himself that he's being a bit on edge and whatnot. So I appreciate how they're building the long form stuff. It's just some of the individual episode stuff that falls a bit flat in this case, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like a bad episode or anything. It's just
no, not at all.
Some, like you said, some of the individual stuff just doesn't really it takes you out of the show because it's not very good. But overall, I think we get a lot of the story, the overall story for the season, and that stuff is all great.
Yeah, so it's a solid. I mean, it's like a solid 7, I guess. I suppose is what we're saying.
Sure.
Because I think the last 3 have all been kind of great episodes. We should probably mention just that Kefir is actually stranded on his own in the because they presume he's also dead.
Poochie.
Because I actually laughed and went, wait, did they kill him the hotshot pilot character? I thought he was being forced by the network to stick around. What's going on?
He's got to go back to his home planet.
But he actually uses, because he sees the shadow ship again and uses its sort of like trajectory, to help get back to the gate. So he actually has a sort of heroic return, and it's kind of the uplifting thing because they think they've lost two pilots and one comes back. It's like, oh hey, we got one back at least. So they all cheer and he gets a promotion. But yeah. So I mean, I think that's probably a big deal that some of our regular characters have now witnessed this shadow ship now. It's starting to feel like a bit more of an imminent threat now that, okay, sure, we'd seen it attack a couple of ships. It seems like Catherine maybe saw it, but now we're actually having main characters start to like witness these events and talk about it. It does feel like things are ramping up. So for the overall progression of the momentum, I think the episode's doing a lot of good stuff. It's just some of the individual episode things that fall a bit flat. So I don't know if we're going to get a lot more of Maynard. Less is probably better. I must say I don't want to see him. Like he can be like in a battle or something, and he's like be corresponding with Sheridan, but I don't need a lot of him.
Yeah, I mean that apparently that ship is quite important and impressive. Sheridan was like, I mean, that also goes for Sheridan's plot line of wanting to be on a ship like that, out doing important things on the rim. But you know, apparently that ship is quite impressive and not a rare one that you don't see very often. So maybe we'll see it during the Great War.
The Cortez, I believe, is the name of the ship.
Cortez the Killer.
Yeah, so there you go. That's basically the episode. Yeah, I mean, honestly, it's a solid episode that's probably at least on par, if not a bit better than, I'd say, an average season 1 episode. But it's just because the episodes 1, 2, and 3 were so strong that this one just feels like it's got some faults that drag it down a little bit.
Yeah, I would agree.
But not without merit, so hey. Other words, give us Londo back, you bastards. Alright.
And Jakar's hilarious.
Jakar is hilarious. Jakar is, I mean, he's not been really funny this season yet because he's been so serious about the war, but Jakar can be really funny.
He had like one scene this season so far.
What are you talking about? He was all over the first episode wanting to send out a ship. Oh no, second episode, sorry. That's the first one. The second one. When he came back.
The second episode.
He demanded to go send a ship, and then he was questioning who might have blabbed. Like, there's a tons of that.
Well, yeah, he's been in like one episode.
One episode. He said like one scene.
I can think of one scene that he was in. Maybe 2.
Okay. You can, of course, let us know what you thought of the episode of Babylon 5 in the comments below. You can like and subscribe. Like and subscribing is super important on YouTube. It is the way which YouTube gauges success and will share us out to more people. So please do hit the old like button. It's the free and easy way to support us. If you want to do it the less free way, you can also go over to patreon.com. Tower.
That's right. If you enjoy the reviews, please check out the Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MalphasTV. And if you donate as low as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes for other shows we do. And if you donate $5 per month, you'll get access to Babylon 5 reviews 1 week early. So you can comment ahead of everyone else. Let us know what we're missing.
Yeah. Also catch us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. Also, did you notice that I almost just did the Patreon plug on my own and realised that you're supposed to do it? So I just sort of stopped dead and said, Tara, tell them about that.
I'm not supposed to do it. You just make me do it.
I'm failing to see the distinction in this case. Anyway, that is us.
It was never part of our agreement when I started this.
Thank you very much for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Babylon 5. Just don't give away the home world.